probably seen those commercials where the former candidate for president and one-term Senator Fred Thompson is out there saying, you should get a reverse mortgage. You can take money out of your home and until you die or something like that. Well, a really interesting piece that if you are considering this or you know anybody who is or has, you might want to read over at the New York Times by Jessica Silver Greenberg. Might even be worth getting her on, I mean, as a reporter or anybody who's working on this thing, is that there are actually protections at law for people who have these reverse mortgages, and the companies have to sell you back the house within, I think it is 90 days of the time that the person dies. Let's say the problem is for the heirs. It's for the children or the siblings of the person who has the reverse mortgage. They end up with the property through probate, and then they end up with the mortgage. So say you've got a house that's worth, $500,000 and half of that, $250,000, has been drained off through a reverse mortgage, has been paid back out to that person before they died, and the housing market collapses and the house is only now worth $200,000, but you owe $250,000 on it. Well, the law says that the heirs can come in and buy that house from the reverse mortgage company for 95% of its appraised value. So if it's only worth $200,000 now, you could come in and buy it for, what would that be, $190,000, I think. And so, which raises the question, okay, if you owe $250 and you're buying it for $190, who's picking up that $60,000 loss? Turns out it's a fund that all these reverse mortgage companies have to pay into. There's an insurance for them for this that was set up by the federal government. They pay into this fund. It's part of the money that gets taken out of the reverse mortgage. But here's the problem. These companies are not telling people about this. People don't know what their rights are. And so the companies in many cases are initiating foreclosure procedures days, weeks after the person dies, long before, and never giving the heirs an opportunity to buy the property back. And so the house that you grew up in when dad and mom die ends up on the auction block. When a lot of heirs would have liked to have kept that house and just turned whatever debt is in it into a normal mortgage. Go to their local bank and say, hey, give me a mortgage on this, we'll pay it off. Or they would have liked to own it enough that they could sell it. But the reverse mortgage companies are getting really slick. So just a heads up. The program and the system at its heart is not an unreasonable one, and there are protections built into it. The problem is you've got for-profit businesses doing this. And if a for-profit business thinks that they can make more money by screwing people and they thinks that they can get away with it and no one's going to go to jail, and the worst thing that'll happen is they may pay a small fine, they will do that. And they are doing that, as Senator Sanders pointed out. These banksters, if you walked up to somebody in a 7-Eleven and pulled a wallet out of their back pocket and ran off with a couple $100 in their credit cards, you could end up in prison for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, depending on the state that it happens in. But if you take their home, literally steal their home from them, throw them out on the street, and you don't just do it to one person, you do it to thousands or tens of thousands of people, you get not 100, you get a $10 million bonus if you're the CEO of one of these big banks. And you never go to jail. And if the government comes along and says, hey, you did wrong by those people, you don't have to make them whole, and the government doesn't make them whole. You just pay a fine, and it goes into the general treasury. This is a sick and twisted way to run a country. There's something just at its core fundamentally wrong with this.